All right, let's dive in, shall we? Today, we're going deep on a case that I know has captivated a lot of you out there, and honestly, me too. The Zodiac Killer. You guys sent in a ton of material on this, articles, theories, the whole shebang.
Yeah, it's a case that just won't quit, is it? It's been decades, and the Zodiac still has this hold on people.
It really does. So let's start, I guess, back at the beginning. December 1968, a Friday night, I think.
The 20th.
Right, December 20th. We're in California, just outside of Vallejo, on this quiet little road called Lake Herman Road. Young couple, Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday, they're parked out there. You know, pretty typical scene, Friday night kids, a lover's lane.
Except this time, it ends in tragedy. They're attacked, shot. It's the first confirmed Zodiac killing. Brutal and seemingly totally random.
And it's that location too, right? It's so isolated. It makes you wonder if, if the Zodiac was testing things out, seeing how it would go.
It's possible. And that isolation, that kind of secluded setting, well, it shows up again in the next attack. Fast forward to July 4th, 1969, Blue Rock Springs Park, another lover's lane. This time, it's Darlene Ferrin and Michael Mageau who are attacked.
And that's where the name Zodiac comes into play. He calls the police, claims responsibility for both the Blue Rock Springs attack and the murders on Lake Herman Road.
Right. That call was huge. Suddenly, this wasn't just a local crime anymore. And then came the letters. The Zodiac starts sending letters to newspapers, the San Francisco Chronicle, others, demanding they be published.
And it's not just letters, right? He includes these ciphers, coded messages. It's like he's taunting everyone, daring them to figure him out.
Imagine opening one of those envelopes, a message from a killer in code. Chilling, right?
Absolutely. And one of those ciphers, the Z408, a couple actually managed to crack it. Donald and Betty Harden, they figured it out.
Can you imagine sitting there and suddenly realizing you've decoded a message from the Zodiac?
And the message itself, I like killing people because it is so much fun. Just sends chills down your spine, doesn't it?
What kind of person says that? What makes someone take pleasure in murder like that? It's a question that still haunts this case, I think.
And the ciphers weren't the only things he sent. He mailed in these, well, almost like trophies. A piece of Paul Stine's shirt, soaked in blood.
Gruesome. He needed everyone to know, to see what he was capable of.
Paul Stine's murder, though, that one felt different. It was in San Francisco, a busy city. He was a taxi driver, alone. Not the usual lover's lane scenario.
Right, but that piece of shirt sent to the Chronicle with the Zodiac symbol, it was definitely him. And it showed he could strike anywhere, target anyone.
Okay, so then we come to Lake Berryessa, September 27, 1969. Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard are having a picnic. A guy comes out of the woods and he's
dressed head to toe in black, executioner's hood, sunglasses, and on his chest, that symbol, the Zodiac symbol.
It's like something straight out of a nightmare. And he had ropes pre-cut. This was planned. He ties them up, stabs them both, leaves another message on Hartnell's car.
The level of detail, the planning, it's terrifying. He was in total control.
Yeah, chilling. Brian Hartnell, thankfully he survived. Cecilia Shepard, sadly she didn't make it. But they both gave descriptions, crucial details, and again he calls the police.
This time from just blocks from the police station. It's like he was taunting them. I'm right here, but you can't catch me.
So on top of those attacks, those victims, there are other cases that might be connected, even though nothing's been proven for sure. Like one that always gets to me, the murder of Cherry Jo Bates in Riverside, California, back in 1966.
Yeah, that one's tricky. There are similarities. The brutality, a note found near the body, even a watch that could be tied to the Zodiac.
But we just don't know for sure. It's like trying to fit pieces of a puzzle together when you're not even sure if they belong.
It's true. It's like with every potential connection, the Zodiac case gets even more more tangled up. And there are more cases, too, like the murders of Robert Domingos and Linda Edwards. 1963, on a beach, another young couple.
Right. And then Donna Lass, a nurse who disappeared in 1970 from Lake Tahoe.
Yeah.
And there was that postcard sent to Paul Avery, the journalist who was, really covering the Zodiac case. Some people think it was the Zodiac hinting about what happened to her.
Yeah, it's eerie how many possible victims there might be. But in terms of a suspect and actual name, one guy always comes up, Arthur Lee Allen, the only person police ever officially named as a suspect.
His background is, well, it's unsettling. Former teacher, convicted sex offender, kicked out of the Navy. You can see why he caught the attention of investigators.
Oh, yeah. He had a Zodiac watch, a bloody knife. And people who knew him, like the Seawater siblings, they talked about his behavior, how he'd take these field trips to places that ended up being, well, Zodiac crime scenes.
Wow. Can you imagine? Thinking back on your childhood and realizing you might have been around someone like that.
Definitely not. It would be, I mean, how do you even process that?
So they had all this circumstantial evidence against Allen, right? They
Hmm.
searched his place, did DNA tests, but nothing ever 100% linked him to the crimes.
That's the thing with this case. You get so close, there are all these possible connections, but they never quite, I don't know, they never quite add up to a sure thing.
Like he was toying with them almost,
Yeah.
leaving clues that led nowhere.
Maybe. And he always maintained his innocence right up until he died in 92. And after that, it felt like the case just stalled.
But even with Allen gone, the Zodiac case didn't really end, did it? New technology, new theories. It's like people refused to let it go.
It's true. Take the Z340 cipher, unsolved for decades. Then in 2020, this group of code breakers from all over the world, they finally cracked it.
Using like super advanced software and stuff.
Right. Which just shows you technology can change things. Even with a cold case like this, who knows what else might be hidden in those ciphers, waiting for the right code breaker to come along.
And then there's Gary Francis Post. He died a few years back, but this group, they call themselves the Case Breakers. They think he was the Zodiac.
They put together a bunch of circumstantial evidence, anagrams, people who knew him and said he acted suspiciously, the whole thing.
It's wild how, even after all these years, new names keep popping up.
I think it shows how much people want to solve this, to finally put a name to the Zodiac and get some answers.
It does make you wonder, doesn't it? What is it about this case that just won't let us go?
Maybe it's because it feels so unfinished. There's this sense that the Zodiac is still out there somewhere. And maybe on some level he is. I mean, even if we never know his real name, the Zodiac, the myth, the idea of him, that's still very real.
It's true. He's become this almost like a boogeyman, the symbol of evil that just lingers. And it's more than just a ghost story, right?
Yeah.
There are real victims, real families who were shattered by this.
Right. And that's what we can't forget. The human cost of all of this. That's why we keep looking, why we keep trying to understand.
Exactly. So let's talk about someone who dedicated a huge part of his life to trying to understand this case, to catch the Zodiac. Dave Toschi, the lead detective. Toschi, he was already kind of a legend in the San Francisco PD, right? I mean,
Yep.
the sharp dresser, the .38 snub nose, and he just had this reputation for, for getting his man.
Yeah, he was like straight out of a movie. And the Zodiac case, it was like, I don't know, like it was made for him.
He really threw himself into it. The interviews, the leads, trying to figure out those codes. But the Zodiac, he was always a step ahead.
And the pressure must have been intense. The whole world was watching, waiting for Toschi to catch this guy.
Can you imagine? It must have felt like chasing a ghost.
Yeah.
Every time they got close, the Zodiac just disappeared.
Yeah. And that kind of pressure, well, it can break you. Toschi, he was obsessed. Working all the time, his personal life suffered. He just had to catch the Zodiac.
It became his whole world, didn't it? Like Captain Ahab and the White Whale.
Exactly. But even though Toschi never officially closed the case, you gotta admire his dedication. I mean, he represents all the cops, everyone who's ever worked this case, and refused to give up.
It's a reminder that even when things seem impossible, people keep trying. They keep fighting for justice.
Yeah. And even though we still don't know who the Zodiac was, those victims, their families, they haven't been forgotten. People are still looking for answers, for some kind of closure.
And it's important to remember them, right? This isn't just about a mystery about codes and ciphers. It's about real lives that were lost, families that were destroyed. That's why this case still matters.
It's true. And I don't know, it's a reminder that sometimes the worst things happen for no reason, and that's hard to accept. So we try to find answers, try to make sense of it.
Yeah, I get that. We may never know for sure who the Zodiac was, why he did what he did. But maybe that's part of what keeps us coming back to this case. We keep searching, hoping that someday the truth will come out.
And until then, it's about remembering the victims, the people who tried to catch him, and never forgetting the human cost of all of this.
The Zodiac may be gone, but the impact he had, the fear, the mystery, that's all still very real. And it reminds us that even in the face of evil, people keep fighting, keep searching for justice. Thank you for listening to Justice for the Souls podcast.